You are listening to the third segment of our four-part series, Sexy Weeds and Hot Stuff from the Tropics with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. Welcome to Time Monk Radio.
Hi, Gemini. Have you been trying yet any of the sexy herbs?
Well, yes, I do have oat straw infusion here, and my husband and I both enjoy it.
All right, excellent. Herbal aphrodisiacs are alive and well, and they'll make us alive and well, too. So, what have we learned so far? First of all, we've learned that the greatest aphrodisiac is the pelvic floor. And that if you are not already doing pelvic floor exercises every time you're standing in a line or every time you're waiting at a red light, you are missing out on the simplest, easiest aphrodisiac there is out there. Not only that, it strengthens your orgasms and helps, if you're a lady, helps things from prolapsing and, wow, helps you not be incontinent. And if you're a man, usually it's kind of the opposite of incontinence that's bothering you as you age, which is harder to go. Keeping that pelvic floor strong can make it easier to go. We learned about using straw, and we learned about using marijuana, and the three G's, ginkgo, ginseng, and ginger. And now let's look at some hot stuff from the tropics, from India, from South America, and from Africa. Now, these are not herbs that you're going to find in your backyard or in the vacant lot next door. In fact, these herbs that we're going to talk about may be much more difficult to find than the other ones we've been talking about, and you may find them more difficult to take because they have some very strange taste, and you may find them more difficult to use. The aphrodisiacs that we're looking at now, the hot stuff from the tropics, are slower acting than the other plants that we've been talking about. And remember that many of those are tonics that take a while to use. But most of these need to be taken daily for a month or more before the results are really evident. And because they're rare, somewhat exotic herbs, we cannot be as fussy about what form we want them in. You've been listening to the show, you know that I am absolutely against herbs in capsules. I think that herbs in capsules are the most expensive, least effective, and most dangerous way to take herbs, and I caution my students not to use herbs in capsules. We could tell a whole segment of horror stories that I've heard of things that have happened because somebody took an herb in a capsule that certainly would not have happened if that herb was not in a capsule. But if we want to explore the effects of guarana, damiana, potency wood, or yohimbe, we may find that we have no choice but to take them as powdered herbs in capsules. Now, one dodge that we can do is to open those capsules, make sure to taste the herb material that is in there, and if it tastes very, very bad to you, you might want to reconsider whether or not this is really the herb for you. Certainly, herbs can have some pretty bitter taste, but we do find that if it's an herb that's going to work well with your body, even though it might taste bitter, it would still be somewhat attractive to you. And if it's just really off-putting and your whole body makes an ugly face when you taste it, then that's probably telling you that you shouldn't be using that. I was at a big conference last weekend, and there was a huge trade show as part of this conference. And one of the exhibitors there was offering genetic testing to determine whether or not you would have a detrimental or a beneficial reaction to any given drug. They can actually begin to look at your genetics and see how you will respond to that. And if we're going to be using drugs, we certainly do need the computers and the genetic testing. But if we're going to be using herbs, we kind of have an onboard genetic testing, which is called your taste buds. And your taste buds will definitely give you a very clear message as to whether or not you should be using this herb. Again, the tinctures are going to be safer, the tinctures are going to be better, but if you can't get hold of these herbs in tincture form and you're interested in experimenting, then capsules are going to be the way you're going to have to go. guarana is a favorite aphrodisiac wherever people have access to it, and it is a potency enhancer. It is native to Brazil. The peeled, dried, roasted, and pulverized seeds are the part used, so it's very difficult to get guarana in any form except in capsules. Guarana has been shown to increase desire in both men and women, not just as a wow, right now I'm going to increase your desire, but over the long haul, and it strengthens the nervous system. It is considered a potent aid not just to sexual health, but to continued health throughout your lifetime. In Brazil, guarana is considered the everything tonic. And the older you are, the more they say you should consider taking guarana on a regular daily basis. I don't take guarana, and I can't tell you from personal experience, but I know a few people who have taken it for a while, and they are quite pleased with the results of it. They don't mind taking it in capsules. And I suggest that they break the capsules open, and they say the taste is really a little weird, and they would rather just swallow it in the capsules. Both of them are taking 1 or 2 capsules a day. The science is not real strong on guarana, but at this point we don't know of any particular harm that would come to anyone who wanted to experiment with using guarana, not just to increase desire, but to strengthen and to ensure good health for many, many years. Damiana is another interesting aphrodisiac herb from the hot spots in the world. The first time that I ever met up with Damiana, it was in the form of a liqueur. And you can probably go out to your local liquor store and ask for Damiana liqueur. This is one instance in which the liqueur, which is a tincture, obviously, is more available than the capsules. Damiana can also be used as an infusion. If you can get hold of the dried leaves of Damiana, you can make an infusion with 1 ounce of dried leaves, put in a quart jar, and that jar filled to the top with boiling water and allowed to steep for 4 hours or overnight, and then strained and put in the refrigerator. It'll last for quite a few days in the refrigerator, and that's fine because you don't need to take a whole bunch of it. A cup of Damiana infusion or a teaspoon of the tincture or a 1 ounce glass of the liqueur taken just before the fun begins will increase her interest and improve his staying power. Now, remember I said that I first saw Damiana liqueur. Well, I should have mentioned to you the bottle that Damiana liqueur comes in, and I think that still to this day Damiana liqueur comes in this bottle, from Mexico at least, and the shape of the bottle is the body of a pregnant woman. Talk about truth in advertising. Huh? So when you are poured a drink from the Damiana bottle, the truth is right there in front of you. Drink this Damiana, you will have sexual intercourse, and you will wind up pregnant, or who knows, perhaps it's not a warning, perhaps it is a blessing and a promise. If you wish to become pregnant, then come and drink of my Damiana. It tastes pretty good. I don't think Damiana tastes bad. I have never had reason to use Damiana regularly, and again, On the few occasions when I have used it, I have really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun and seemed to kind of, when it was done, just leave it quite silently and not leave any residue or any problem behind. Damiana, a pretty, of the four hot stuff herbs from the tropics that we're talking about on this show, Damiana is for sure the easiest one to get and the easiest of them all to use. A more exotic one from South America is called Potency Wood. Great name, huh? Or Mura Puama. All right. It is said that the Mura Puama is the ecstasy of the life. That when you are feeling like things is just too much, it's really like overwhelm and you don't know how you can deal with anything, that Mura Puama is the herb for you. If you are just too exhausted, too tired, too run down, and too weak to even consider being sexual, then Potency Wood is the herb for you. If it's just too much trouble to even have sex with yourself, to even pleasure yourself, then Potency Wood is what you want to look for. It is difficult to find Potency Wood in any form other than capsules, is my experience. But fairly recently, I am glad to say, the tincture has become available. 1 to 2 dropperfuls of tincture twice a day helped between 50 and 75% of those who were having problems. So people who were having problems used 1 to 2 dropperfuls of tincture of Mura Puama twice a day, and 50 to 75% of those people reported their libido was intensified. Their arousal was faster, their engorgement was stronger, and their pleasure was greatly, greatly heightened. The science tells us that Mura Puama can lower the blood pressure. This is generally not going to be much of a problem for people. But if you take it and you lay down, and then your blood pressure is lowered, and you suddenly get up, you may not be able to posturally get the blood up to your brain quick enough, and you could theoretically pass out, fall down, bonk your head, and maybe even die from it. So although it sounds pretty benign that it could lower blood pressure, the consequence of having your blood pressure lowered could be fairly severe. So I often say, if you're using Potency Wood, and using Potency Wood in conjunction with having fun in bed, be a little cautious about getting up. Just check to see that for sure, right, it's not going to make you so dizzy that you fall face forward, because that's not sexy. Yohimbe of the plants that I am talking about is the one that you're most likely to have heard of. Guarana, Damiana, and Murapuama are plants that are pretty popular in their homelands and have gotten out and about a bit. But the Yohimbe bark from a tropical West African bark is definitely one that has had a lot written about it. In West Africa, it is said to be the friend to the older lover. tincture of yohimbe is sometimes available. Both tincture and capsules improve blood flow to all of the erectile tissues, both male and female. Regular use also enhances desire, increases smooth muscle relaxation, and enhances orgasm. What can science tell us? Science tells us that yohimbe increases the amount of norepinephrine. This is a compound which is found in the blood, and it causes his erection and her desire. The amount of norepinephrine that we make or that is circulating in the blood does tend to decrease with age. So, using yohimbe can actually counter this norepinephrine decrease and help to bring it back up to the levels that we had it when we were younger. If you have diabetes or heart disease, and the diabetes or the heart disease is interfering with your sexual pleasure, yohimbe stands ready to help you. In fact, yohimbe is the only FDA-approved anti-impotence herbal drug. All right, it's not just yohimbe. It's yohimbe hydrochloride, which is indeed a drug. Okay, it's an herbal drug, and it is FDA-approved. Its effects on men and women include increased stamina. You can do it for longer. Heightened sensation. It feels a lot better for the longer that you're doing it, and greater desire. You want to do it for longer as well. What a good convergence of feelings to have all at once. When we gave 100 men who had erectile dysfunction yohimbe, consistent use helped 81% of them achieve erections on their own. There are so many things that we can do to help with erectile difficulties. And remember, way back in the first show, we talked about some herbs that we could use instead of blood pressure drugs, or instead of drugs to deal with anxiety or depression. And now we are also seeing that yohimbe has been FDA approved to help counter the erectile difficulties, the sexual difficulties that men and women who are taking those drugs experience. So if you feel safest taking your drugs, here's the herb that is going to be the greatest helper for you. Right? Now, like the potency would, yohimbe can lower blood pressure. So again, if you take yohimbe and you jump right in bed, be cautious when you get up. But in general, yohimbe is taken regularly, not as a just before the event thing. Yohimbe is also a short-term MAO inhibitor. What does that mean? That means you do not want to take it with foods that are high in tyramine. And those things would include cheese, chocolate, nuts, beer, red wine, red grape juice, or aged meat. So you want to have the nice fish dinner, no cheese, no chocolate dessert, if you're going to be using yohimbe. And you would also want to avoid taking tyrosine or phenylalanine supplements. All of these go through the MAO pathway, and given that yohimbe is an MAO inhibitor, there is going to be some distress if we combine yohimbe with foods high in tyramine, tyrosine, or phenylalanine. Nor should yohimbe be used with amphetamines, antihistamines, caffeine, or sedatives. The scientific community feels that yohimbe is not safe to use if you are taking an antidepressant, but the herbal community does not agree with that, especially because yohimbe is so effective at dealing with the erectile difficulties caused by the antidepressant drugs. The herbal community, as I have been doing in this segment, suggests that you try for yourself and see if using yohimbe is something that can counter the sexual difficulties that arise when you are taking your antidepressant drug. However, we do agree that because of certain other aspects of yohimbe, if you are taking drug sedatives, drug antihistamines, if you are consuming products that are very high in caffeine, or if somehow you've gotten a prescription for amphetamine, don't use yohimbe. There's certainly a strong likelihood of interaction with these kinds of drugs. Yohimbe can be agitating to the nervous system, unlike many of the other herbal aphrodisiacs that we have been talking about, especially guarana on this segment, which strengthens the nervous system. Yohimbe seems to agitate the nerves. And although it can be used on a regular basis, it's important to monitor that closely and see whether or not the nervous system seems to be going along well. It's also possible with regular use of yohimbe bark that there could be some problem with the kidneys. This is a little hard to tease out from the studies because, as I said, in West Africa, where it is mostly used, although it's on the world market as well. It's older men who are using it, and older men tend to have urinary difficulties. Whether or not this is arising from a kidney problem caused by the use of yohimbe, or whether it's just kind of they're running parallel and it's not really caused by the yohimbe, we don't quite have enough evidence at this point to really make a clear distinction or really have a good sense of how that is going. I'm talking about different amino acids here tonight and mentioning that we should be careful of certain amino acids if we are going to be using yohimbe. But there are other amino acids that we might want to think about taking, and they're safe to take even if we're using any of these plants, and one of them is L-choline. It is an amino acid which is critical to the erectile process. In other words, for tissue to be engorged, L-choline has got to be present, and it's got to be present in fairly large amounts. The difficulty is that if we take it, we have to take those fairly large amounts, which is 1 to 3 grams a day. We're not talking micrograms or even milligrams here. We're talking about 1 to 3 grams of L-choline, and this amount causes stiffness of the upper back and the neck, headache, and diarrhea. That doesn't sound so sexy, does it? Again, this is one of those things that has to be put in context. So is this a man that we're talking about or a woman who has found that everything that modern medicine can offer, not including surgery, hasn't worked for them? Is this a person who's considering surgery at this point. Well, certainly using something like choline would be safer than surgery, although it's not in and of and by itself tremendously safe. If you take vitamin um, B5, which is pantothenic acid, with the L-choline, then your orgasms will be longer and will be stronger as well. So while you're in the store buying that bottle of L-choline pills, snatch up a bottle of vitamin B5 at the same time. And Carolyn Dean says, don't stop there. Make sure you get a magnesium supplement as well. Magnesium is the mineral that protects sexual functioning and protects the libido. Carolyn Dean is a wonderful MD and a dear friend of mine, and just as I am gung-ho about infusion, she is totally gung-ho about magnesium. To her, there is nothing that magnesium cannot help. And, of course, if you're drinking your nourishing herbal infusions on a regular basis, then you will not need to take a magnesium supplement because there's lots of magnesium in those herbal supplements. Right? L-DOPA is another amino acid that stimulates erection and desire. The best food sources of L-DOPA are fava beans. And I can tell you from personal experience that fava beans definitely increase blood flow to the genitals. My sweetheart and I were first night in Spain, and we didn't realize how late they ate there, and we were quite hungry. We were finally taken pity on by a maitre d' at a restaurant who took us in and sat us down in this completely empty restaurant. It was, at this point, 8 o'clock at night, and nobody was going to be even thinking about dinner for another couple of hours. And he served us what he said, you cannot order, I will simply bring you food. And he did. And he brought us wonderful, wonderful food. And the first course was soup, a little bowl of soup made of fava beans. And I'm sitting there, delicious, eating my fava bean soup, and I turn to my sweetheart and I say, you should stop eating your soup. And he looks at me and he's like, what, you're trying to steal my soup? I'll give you some. I said, no, no, no. I'm remembering a Latin piece that I had to translate about how this village stopped the Roman army by feeding them fava beans. I said, and if I'm remembering this, then it's probably important. It's probably coming up in my memory for some reason. So I advise you to stop eating those fava beans because you are Italian extraction, and those fava beans are going to do something unpleasant to you. He says, yeah, I know you want the rest of my soup. But fortunately for me, he took me seriously, so he ate about half of his bowl of fava beans. And the next day, we were in El Coriel, and looking at all of the beautiful art there, and I turned to him, and his face is white, and I said to him, are you okay? And he goes, no, I am not okay. We have to find a place and sit down. And I say, what is going on? He says, oh, my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't eat more of that soup. My testicles feel like they are on fire and expanding at a very, very rapid rate, and I can no longer walk. This is just far too distracting. So you can get L-DOPA, possibly, but it comes by prescription only, or you can eat enough fava beans to give you that sensation, or you can take supplements of L-tyrosine and L-phenylalanine. Now remember that we weren't supposed to take these if we were going to take yohimbe, but they are precursors to L-DOPA. A dose is between 100 and 500 milligrams of each on a daily basis. And remember that we said that yohimbe, one of the downfalls of it, is that it could make you fall down because it lowers blood pressure. However, supplements of L-tyrosine and L-phenylalanine actually raise the blood pressure. So there's a few hot herbs from the tropics for you. We'll be back with our fourth and last week on sexy herbs with a look at oriental herbs. And meanwhile, come and visit me at susanweed.com or check out my books, including my latest book down there, Sexual and Reproductive Health for Men and Women, The Wise Woman Way, at my bookshop, wisewomanbookshop.com. See you there.
Thank you, Susan. This completes the third segment of our four-part series, Sexy Weeds, Hot Stuff from the Tropics, with Susan Wade at Time Monk Radio.